At 223 hours, 3 Ukrainian FPV-1 drones crossed into Russian-monitored waters at 180 kilometers per hour, heading straight for a Russian ship that had been strangling Ukraine's naval drone operations. The Russian spy vessel sat 15 miles off Novorossiysk, its R-381T arrays constantly listening. For 6 weeks, it had been logging patterns of life only days away from predicting Ukrainian launch timings. The patrol had been quiet until now, but that was about to change. Unbeknownst to the Russian crew, the Ukrainian drones were skimming just 3 meters above the waves, coming directly toward them. Their plywood airframes gave them radar cross-sections smaller than a seagull, virtually invisible to systems calibrated for aluminum aircraft. 20 minutes after launch, a Russian 4-post R reconnaissance drone appeared on the horizon, flying its routine racetrack patrol 30 kilometers off the Ukrainian coast. Its Canadian-made MX-15DI camera could spot a basketball from 5 kilometers away, and its thermal sensors could detect a temperature difference of just 2 degrees Celsius. At 0245, the lead FPV-1's engine heat spike appeared on the 4-post's display, 3 tiny contacts low altitude heading east at 180 kilometers per hour. The Russian operators zoomed in trying to identify the targets. Immediately, the drone's pre-programmed evasive sequence kicked in. They dropped to just 2 meters above the surface, vanishing into what radar operators call ground clutter, the chaotic reflections from waves that mask low-flying objects. Within minutes, their plywood frames had cooled to match the sea temperature. On the 4-post's thermal camera, they disappeared completely. The operator logged the contact as possible birds and moved on, not realizing he had just ignored the vanguard of an attack. Behind them, the reason for the rushed launch became clear. Russian Shahed drones had located the Ukrainian launch site and arrived minutes after the FPV-1s departed. Operators barely escaped before 50-kilogram warheads turned their equipment into burning debris. Russia's intelligence network was already working, but not fast enough to stop what came next. At 0330 hours, as the FPV-1s crossed the Black Sea, 20 Ukrainian naval drones launched toward Sevastopol at 80 kilometers per hour. What happened next would lure Russia into leaving its most valuable intelligence asset completely exposed. The decoy swarm consisted of modified jet skis and cheap commercial boats, fitted with basic guidance systems. Each cost less than $10,000 and mimicked the radar profile of genuine Mira V5 naval drones. They maintained formation, transmitted the correct radio signatures, and moved at attack speed. To Russian radar operators, it appeared to be the largest naval drone assault since October 2022. Creating such a convincing illusion required precise planning, realistic attack vectors, converging formations, even evasive maneuvers. Ukrainian operators guided them via satellite link for the first 50 kilometers, then switched to autopilot. Each transmitted on frequencies known to be monitored by Russian intelligence. Some even carried small heat sources to imitate the infrared signatures of armed drones. The deception worked perfectly. The Russian admiral at Novorossiysk had 6 K-27PL helicopters on standby, with 4 more at Sevastopol. These aircraft were the Black Sea Fleet's primary defense against naval drones. Ships were too slow, and fighters couldn't hover to search. Helicopters could sweep 100 kilometers in 20 minutes, drop RGB-16 depth charges lethal within 50 meters, and use dipping sonar to detect underwater drones. But Russian doctrine prioritized responding to visible threats first. All 6 Novorossiysk helicopters launched west at 270 kilometers per hour. The deep womp-womp of their rotors faded into the distance as they raced toward the false swarm. Every minute they flew west was another minute the real Ukrainian drones flew east unopposed. By the time Russia realized the trick, the aircraft would be 360 kilometers out of position. The spy ship, 15 miles off Novorossiysk, now had no air cover, no quick reaction force, and no way to vector helicopters toward new contacts. For the next 2 hours, any drone that slipped past the patrol boats would have a clear path. The 3 FPV-1s adjusted course 15 degrees north, an intentional move exploiting months of Ukrainian observation. Russia had 2 Podlet K-1 radar stations covering that sector, each rotating exactly 10 times per minute. Picture 2 searchlights spinning in circles. For 4 seconds every minute, both were pointed away from the same dark corridor. That 2-kilometer gap was the window the drones needed to slip through. But the Russians had adapted, introducing random desynchronization to eliminate predictable blind spots. The corridor was shrinking. The first drone entered at U447, 4 seconds, invisible, 2 seconds visible, as one radar swept past, then gone again. The operator saw a fleeting blip, something small and fast. The second drone followed 30 seconds later, still invisible, still steady. The third wasn't so lucky. A microscopic flaw in its autopilot gyroscope made it drift 200 meters off course and widening. At 0448, Russian operators received updated orders, randomized rotation patterns again. The third drone corrected hard north, burning valuable fuel entering the collapsing corridor at 0449. Both radars picked it up clearly, bearing 270 speed, 180. Altitude 50 meters. The operator compared it to the decoy assault near Sevastopol and dismissed it as probable bird. The drone slipped through, but its detour burned 12 minutes of fuel. It would reach the target with less than a minute of flight time remaining. Meanwhile, the Russian spy ship maintained its post 15 miles off the coast. 2 Project 00360 patrol boats formed a protective ring 5 kilometers out, standard procedure since the loss of the Moskva. The spy ship's radar guided them like a quarterback calling plays. At 0500, the decoy fleet performed its final act. As Russian helicopters closed in, the 20 fake drones scattered. Some beached on empty shoreline, others circled aimlessly until fuel ran out. None attempted to strike real targets. Their job was done. Russian helicopters burned fuel and ammunition, chasing phantoms worth less than a single depth charge. When they turned back, they were 180 kilometers from base and running low on fuel. At 600 hours, the lead FPV-1 was 240 kilometers from its target when its GPS began drifting east. The drone hadn't turned. The Russians had activated their R-300 spoofing system from Crimea. This wasn't crude jamming, but sophisticated deception, broadcasting false GPS signals at 100 watts compared to real satellites at a fraction of a watt. It began steering the drone toward a Panzer battery. But Ukrainian operators had prepared for this. Every 50 kilometers, oil platforms dotted the Black Sea. The FPV-1's onboard camera could spot them from 5 kilometers away, allowing operators to reset navigation manually using visual reference points. No spoofing can defeat the good old Mark I human eye. The second drone wasn't so fortunate. At 06115, its GPS receiver failed not from jamming, but from a cheap Chinese capacitor that couldn't handle temperature cycling. Without GPS, it switched to inertial navigation, but over open water errors accumulate fast 10 meters per minute. Within half an hour, it was 8 kilometers off course and flying toward empty ocean. At 0645, it hit the water and vanished. 2 drones remained. The third still had functional GPS, but not for long. The Russian ship went active, its mineral ME radar sweeping the western approaches. Every electronic circuit creates harmonics, ghost frequencies, and Russia's signals team exploited this. At 0723, they found one bearing 285 speed, 180 kilometers per hour, range 15 kilometers. Radar lock achieved. The lead drone's primitive threat receiver detected the lock, but its wooden body confused radar designed for metal. The algorithms searched for crisp reflections. Wood returned soft, inconsistent echoes. The radar kept losing track. The operator reported intermittent contact, possibly birds. The drone responded automatically, cutting all non-essential systems, flying blind on compass heading alone. Meanwhile, the ship's own R984UM jammers began causing electromagnetic interference across communication bands. Each time they transmitted, they disrupted their own radar. Russian doctrine called this electromagnetic fratricide, friendly systems blinding each other. It was a known risk, and they were about to pay for it. At 0725, the ship dispatched a patrol boat to investigate the intermittent contact. The craft sped off at 35 knots, the forward gunner loading a 200-round PKM belt. They had drilled this scenario hundreds of times, engage low-flying targets at 500 meters walk tracers, into the path, maintain fire, until splash. But they had trained against aluminum drones with infrared signatures. No one had warned them about plywood ghosts. The lead drone had 3 minutes of fuel left. Behind it, the third drone flew on blind, but undetected. Morning fog thickened, cutting visibility to 500 meters. At 0730, the lead FPV-1 reached its target area 15 miles off Novorossiysk. The Russian spy ship was right where predicted, still vectoring patrol boats toward false contacts. Its radar coverage formed a fence, 2 patrol boats with overlapping mineral ME arcs, each covering 120 degrees and detecting 0.1 square meter targets at 15 kilometers. Soviet doctrine assumed one thing: physics would cooperate. But the Black Sea had other plans. A temperature inversion formed warm air above cool water, bending radar beams upward like light through a prism. Anything flying below 30 meters became invisible. The FPV-1 cruising at 3 meters might as well have been underwater. The lead drone appeared visually to a patrol boat at 500 meters. The gunner opened fire. Tracers stitched the waves. 3 rounds hit the wooden fuselage, one clipping the propeller. The engine rattled, but kept running. The drone pushed through 90 seconds of fuel remaining. At 0733, the spy ship's mast came into view 800 meters out, but the damaged propeller cracked its mount. The patrol boat radioed drone inbound bearing 285 damaged, but still flying. The bridge crew grabbed binoculars, scanning south, exactly the wrong direction. The third FPV-1, flying by mechanical gyroscope alone, emerged from the haze at 0734, approaching from the port bow 10 meters above the water. The lead drone's engine seized, plunging into the sea. Every Russian eye followed the splash, just as the real threat bore down unseen. The ship's radar couldn't depress below 5 degrees, its designers never imagining a target so low. The patrol boats were out of position. A lookout finally spotted the drone at 300 meters too late. The camera on the FPV-1 centered on the bridge mast, housing all 3 antenna arrays. The 25-kilogram warhead hit squarely, detonating at the base of the mast. The explosion gutted the bridge. The R381T arrays melted into slag. Computers storing 6 weeks of intercepts and launch patterns disintegrated. Secondary blasts rippled through the power bays. When the fires finally died 18 hours later, the ship's electronics looked like twisted sculpture. 6 weeks of intelligence work, dozens of recorded launches, data that could have crippled Ukraine's drone war, gone in seconds. The vessel would sail again, but its electronic eyes and ears were permanently blind. Within hours, Ukrainian drones launched from new sites following new patterns, unseen once more. Russian strikes still came, but they were hitting empty fields. The pattern was broken.